Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Let's drift into a soothing story together as you begin your journey into a restful and rejuvenating sleep. The day was drawing to a close, the sky painted in hues of soft pink and lavender as the sun dipped low behind the hills. The chill of winter had begun to settle, creeping through the air like a quiet reminder of nature's changing seasons. The world felt still, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to stir it back to life. In the midst of the calm, a young girl named Elira wandered through the woods. Her family had lived at the edge of the village for as long as she could remember, but recently the loss of her mother had cast a shadow over their small home. Elira's heart felt heavy, and no matter how much she tried to carry on, the weight of grief seemed to press on her chest. It was as if the world had lost its colour, its warmth, and she was left searching for something to fill the emptiness. That evening, as Elira walked through the snow-dusted forest, a strange pull in the air caught her attention. The usual sounds of the forest, birds, rustling leaves, the faint whisper of the wind, had fallen silent, replaced by something else. A soft hum, like a distant lullaby, seemed to beckon her forward. She hesitated at first, but the yearning in her heart, the same longing she had felt since her mother's passing, pushed her onward. The wind, gentle yet insistent, guided her steps as if it knew the path she was meant to follow. The trees around her, tall and ancient, creaked softly in the breeze, their gnarled branches reaching out like welcoming arms. The further she ventured into the forest, the deeper the hum seemed to grow. It was no longer a whisper, but a song, one that resonated with something deep within her. She felt it. Something ancient, something wise. Soon, Elira found herself standing before an enormous tree, unlike any she had ever seen before. Its trunk was wide and knotted, its bark a deep shade of grey, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. The tree towered over her, its branches stretching high into the sky, adorned with delicate leaves that shimmered silver in the last rays of the sun. The air around the tree was warmer than anywhere else in the forest, and the hum of its song grew louder, resonating in her chest. Elira felt a strange pull, as though the tree itself was calling her, inviting her to come closer. She stepped forward hesitantly, drawn by an unseen force. As she neared the base of the tree, she placed her hand on the smooth, cold bark. To her surprise, the tree felt warm beneath her touch, as though it were alive, breathing with the rhythm of the earth. The hum of the tree seemed to fill her entire being, and for a moment Elira closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. She felt a sense of peace, a calmness that she hadn't known in weeks. It was as though the world around her had disappeared, leaving only the tree, its warmth, and its song. The grief that had weighed so heavily on her heart began to lift, and in its place she felt a deep sense of comfort, as though she were exactly where she needed to be. Slowly the hum of the tree began to quiet, fading into a soft whisper. Elira opened her eyes and gasped. Standing before her, though not in the physical form she was used to, was a figure. The elder tree mother, her face both ancient and ageless, gazed down at Elira with eyes that sparkled like the stars. Her hair cascaded in long silver threads, and her robes were made of leaves and vines, woven together in an intricate pattern that seemed to shift with the wind. "I've been waiting for you, child," the elder tree mother's voice echoed softly, her words as warm and inviting as the tree itself. "Come closer, for the path you seek lies within the heart of the forest." Elira's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward, unsure of what to say, unsure of what she was hearing. Who are you?" Her voice trembled as if speaking the words would make this mystical encounter disappear. "I am the elder tree mother," the figure said, her voice like the rustling of leaves. "I am the spirit of the trees, the earth, and the seasons. I have watched over the forest for many lifetimes, and I have watched over you too. Your heart, though burdened with grief, carries the seed of something more, something that the world needs." Elira felt a rush of emotions flood through her, wonder, confusion, and a deep, unexplainable connection to this mystical being. The tree's warmth wrapped around her like a blanket, and she felt safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. "You are not lost, Elira," the elder tree mother continued, her voice gentle. "The sorrow you feel is but a part of the journey. It is not the end. You have the strength to heal, to grow, and to find your way back to the light." The weight of the mother's words settled into Elira's heart, and for the first time she felt a spark of hope. Her grief was not the end of her story. It was simply a chapter in a much larger tale. The elder tree mother was offering her something: wisdom, guidance, and a way forward. "Come," the elder tree mother said, her eyes twinkling. "There is much you must learn and much you must understand. Your journey has just begun, and I will be here to guide you every step of the way." The wind picked up as Gerda stood before the elder tree mother, her heart still racing from the strange yet peaceful encounter. Her thoughts swirled with confusion, but beneath it all was a stirring sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. The elder tree mother had spoken of a journey, of healing and growth, but what did it mean? Was this tree truly magical, as it seemed? Could it really help her overcome the grief she had carried for so long? The figure before her, so ancient yet so ageless, smiled gently, as if she could read the questions in Gerda's heart. "All will be clear in time," the elder tree mother said softly, her voice like a breeze whispering through the leaves. "But first you must listen, child. The world is full of cycles, of beginnings and endings. The seasons change, the leaves fall, and yet they always return, reborn. So too can your heart heal and grow anew." Gerda felt the weight of the words settling within her, and she nodded, though she still didn't fully understand. The elder tree mother extended one slender hand, her fingers like branches reaching towards Gerda. The warmth emanating from her was comforting, as if the tree itself were offering her a sense of safety, an invitation to embrace the change ahead. "Come, child," the elder tree mother said again, a glimmer of kindness in her eyes. "There is much for you to see, to feel, and to understand. Follow me." Without hesitation, Gerda stepped forward, placing her hand into the tree's outstretched one. It felt as if she were touching the pulse of nature itself, alive, vibrant, and timeless. The world around her began to shift, and suddenly the forest seemed to come alive in ways she had never imagined. The air grew warm, filled with the scent of pine and earth, and the faint rustling of the leaves seemed to speak to her, as though the very trees were whispering ancient secrets. They walked through the forest together, Gerda and the elder tree mother, the path winding through towering trees whose bark shimmered with a faint glow. The ground beneath their feet was soft, moss-covered, and the faint sound of running water echoed in the distance. The peacefulness of the scene contrasted with the turmoil that had once gripped Gerda's heart. It was as if nature itself had become a sanctuary, a safe haven where she could lay down her burdens and let go of the grief she had carried for so long. As they walked, the elder tree mother spoke, her voice calm and steady. "You have known loss, Gerda. We all do, in one form or another. It is a part of the natural order. But grief is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a process, a bridge between what was and what will be. To heal, you must honor your grief and allow it to move through you, just as the seasons move through the land. Winter may seem endless, but it always gives way to spring. It is the same with your heart." Gerda listened intently, her eyes wide as she took in the wisdom of the elder tree mother. The grief she had felt for her mother, the sadness that had clouded her vision, seemed to soften with each step. She realized that her sadness had not been something to hide or fight against, but something to understand and embrace. It was a part of her, but it did not define her. She could let it go slowly as the snow melted under the warmth of the sun. The path ahead began to change. The trees, once dark and heavy with winter, started to show signs of life. The first buds of spring began to bloom on the branches, their colors soft and delicate. Gerda marveled at the beauty of the scene. It was as if the world around her was shifting, much like her own heart, which was beginning to feel lighter. more at peace. You see, child, the elder tree mother continued, her voice full of quiet strength, all things are connected. Life flows like a river, and sometimes we must let ourselves be carried by it. You are not alone in your grief, nor in your healing. The earth, the trees, the animals, all are with you, all are part of this journey. Gerda's heart swelled with gratitude as the realization began to settle within her. She wasn't alone. The world itself was filled with life, with love, with a deep, eternal connection that could never be broken. Her mother's spirit, though no longer physically with her, was still a part of the world she inhabited. It lived in the warmth of the sun, in the rustling of the leaves, in the song of the birds that filled the journey through the forest continued, and as they reached the edge of a clearing, the elder tree mother stopped and turned to Gerda, her eyes shining with a knowing light. "You are ready," she said softly. "You have listened and you have understood. Now you must take this knowledge with you. The world is waiting for you to return, to share the light of your heart. And when you do, you will see that the love you seek, love for yourself, for those you've lost, for the world, is already within you." Gerda stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the truth of the elder tree mother's words. She felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known in what felt like forever. Her grief had not vanished, but it had softened, become something she could live with, something she could grow from. She understood now that it was not about forgetting, but about healing, about allowing the seasons of her heart to change, just as the seasons changed in the world around her. "Thank you," Gerda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She'd learned more in this brief moment than she ever thought possible. She could move forward now, no longer weighed down by the past. She was ready to embrace whatever the future held. With a final gentle smile, the elder tree mother faded into the mist of the forest, leaving Gerda standing in the clearing, alone but not lonely, filled with the warmth of a love that would carry her through the rest of her life. As she took her first step back towards home, the world felt different, alive, open, and full of possibility. The road ahead seemed lighter, even though the forest had not yet fully thawed. Gerda walked with a newfound sense of peace, the lessons of the elder tree mother quietly woven into her heart. Each step she took felt less heavy, as if the very earth beneath her feet was supporting her, carrying her forward on this journey of healing and understanding. The weight of grief, which had once threatened to consume her, now felt more like a quiet companion rather than a crushing burden. The wind whispered through the trees, and Gerda could hear the faint rustling of leaves overhead, a gentle reminder that life was still moving, still changing. Though the landscape around her still bore the marks of winter, there were subtle signs of renewal, small buds poking out from the branches, the first signs of green appearing on the ground beneath her boots. It was as if the world was mirroring the transformation taking place within her, the thawing of her heart as she embraced the love and wisdom the elder tree mother had shared with her. As Gerda walked, her mind wandered back to the time before the Snow Queen's spell had touched Kay, before the harsh winds of winter had driven them apart. She remembered the laughter they shared, the simple joys of life, and how they had once been inseparable. She had loved Kay with all her heart, and though the distance between them had been vast, the love had never faded. Now, with the weight of the Snow Queen's coldness lifted from her own heart, she could feel that love stirring again, stronger than ever. In the distance, the sound of running water reached her ears. Her footsteps slowed as she approached the stream, its clear waters gently flowing over the smooth stones, the light sparkling off the surface like diamonds. She knelt by the water's edge, gazing at her reflection in the rippling current. For the first time in a long while, she could see the person she had become, not the girl lost in grief, but someone who had endured, who had survived. She had come so far, and now as she stared at the clear water, she could see her future unfolding ahead of her, full of possibilities. The sound of the stream seemed to soothe her, its rhythmic flow calming her racing thoughts. She dipped her fingers into the cool water, feeling the cold rush over her skin, a stark contrast to the warmth in her heart. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to absorb the peace of the moment. This was the beginning of something new, something beautiful, The road ahead was still unknown, but for the first time, she was not afraid. She was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had the strength to navigate it. As Gerda rose from the stream, she felt a shift in the air. The sun had begun to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the path before her. She knew she had to keep moving, but there was no rush now. There was no longer a sense of urgency that once plagued her every step. The journey was still long, and she had much to learn, but now she understood that the journey itself was just as important as the destination. The trees around her, once dark and foreboding, now seemed to welcome her. The snow had melted further, revealing patches of earth that had been hidden beneath the frost. The sky above, once clouded and grey, now shone with soft golden hues, as if the very heavens were offering her encouragement. It was as if the world itself had taken a deep breath and exhaled with her. She continued down the winding path, her heart light and full of hope. Every step felt purposeful, as if each one brought her closer to understanding something deeper within herself. The elder tree mother's wisdom, once mysterious and foreign, now seemed to resonate within her, guiding her through the forest, through the seasons, and through the quiet moments of reflection. Gerda had learned that healing was not a destination, but a journey, one that took time, patience, and understanding. As she walked, she encountered others along the way, familiar faces from her village, people who had known her as a child. They smiled as they saw her, their faces lighting up with recognition. But it wasn't just the familiar faces that Gerda noticed. It was the way they looked at her now. There was a new respect in their eyes, a new understanding. It was as though the girl they had once known, who had been lost in her grief, had returned not as she was before, but as someone new, someone stronger. "Gerda," one of the villagers called out, "you've returned." Gerda smiled warmly, her heart swelling with a sense of connection. She had returned, but not as the same person who had left. She had walked through the winter, through the coldest of storms, and she had come out the other side with a new understanding of herself and of the world around her. And though the road ahead would still have its challenges, she was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. The village, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, felt like home once more. Gerda could hear the sounds of children laughing, the rustling of the trees in the wind, and the comforting hum of life continuing its cycle. She could feel it in her bones. She was part of this cycle, part of something much bigger than herself. And as she walked back into the village, her steps light and sure, she knew that her journey was far from over. There would be more seasons to come, more lessons to learn, but now, with the warmth of the sun on her face and the love in her heart, she was ready for whatever came next. The village, which had once seemed distant and forgotten, now felt like a sanctuary. As Gerda walked through the familiar streets, she noticed the way the houses seemed to glow in the fading light, the windows reflecting the soft warmth of the hearths within. There was no rush now, no sense of urgency pushing her forward. The world, though still quiet and serene, had transformed around her, just as she had. Gerda took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, but it wasn't as cold as before. It was crisp but not biting, refreshing, like the first cool breeze of spring after a long winter. She could hear the faint sound of children's laughter nearby, their voices high and joyful as they played in the yard, their carefree energy filling the air with life. The soft rhythmic tapping of a hammer against wood echoed from the blacksmith's shop, a familiar sound that brought a sense of nostalgia rushing back. Everything was as it had always been, yet it felt so different now, warmer, fuller, alive in a way that Gerda had almost forgotten. As she continued her walk, she could feel the presence of her family drawing nearer. She passed by her childhood home, a simple cottage with a thatched roof, nestled at the edge of the village. It stood just as it had all those years ago, its walls weathered but sturdy, the garden growing with flowers and herbs that her mother used to tend. Gerda's heart swelled with emotion as she paused for a moment, her gaze resting on the cottage. The memories came flooding back, the laughter at the dinner table, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the quiet moments by the fire where they would talk about dreams, fears, and the future. A gentle voice broke through her thoughts. "Gerda, is that really you?" She turned, startled for a moment, but then her heart lifted as she saw her grandmother approaching, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. Gerda hadn't expected to see her so soon, but the sight of her familiar face brought a rush of comfort, as if the final piece of her long journey had fallen into place. Her grandmother's arms opened wide, and Gerda felt the warmth of her embrace enveloping her, as though she had never left. "Oh, my dear child," her grandmother murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "I can hardly believe it. You've come home. You've returned." Gerda smiled through the tears that welled in her eyes. "I've come home, Grandma," she whispered, her voice trembling with the quiet relief that had been building within her since she had first set foot in the village. Her grandmother pulled back slightly to look at her eyes searching Gerda's face. "You've changed, my dear, but you look peaceful, as if the storm inside you has finally passed." Gerda nodded, her heart full. "I have changed," she said softly, "but I feel like I've found what I needed to heal. I've learned so much on this journey. I think I'm finally ready to return home for good." Her grandmother smiled and nodded, pulling Gerda close again. "You've always had a strong heart, Gerda, a heart full of love and light, but now you've found the strength to let go of the darkness that weighed you down. I knew you would return, just as the seasons return after the cold winter, and now we will all heal together." The sound of footsteps approaching caught Gerda's attention, and she turned to see her family standing just behind her, their faces lighting up with surprise and joy. They too had been waiting for her return, and now that she was home, they embraced her as though no time had passed. Her father, his broad shoulders softened with age, wrapped her in a warm hug, and her siblings surrounded her with laughter and words of welcome. "I missed you, Gerda," her father said, his voice rough with emotion. "We all missed you." Gerda felt tears welling in her eyes once more, but this time they were tears of happiness. She had been through so much, and yet, here she was, standing among the people she loved, the people who had always been there for her. No matter the hardships she had faced, the love of her family and her home would always be a steady presence in her life. "We're so glad you're back," one of her siblings said, a bright smile lighting up their face. "I'm glad to be back," Gerda replied, her voice filled with contentment. "I've learned that home is more than just a place. It's the people you love, the warmth you share, and the memories that live on in your heart." Her family led her into the warmth of the cottage, where the hearth was already crackling with fire, the comforting scent of stew bubbling away in the pot. The sound of conversation filled the air, and Gerda felt herself sinking into the familiar rhythm of life. The quiet moments by the fire, the laughter at the dinner table, the quiet assurance of family. These were the things that had been missing from her life for so long, but now they were all here again. As the evening wore on, the village outside settled into the peaceful quiet of the night. The stars glittered overhead, a reminder that no matter the storms they faced, there was always a light in the darkness. And as Gerda sat with her family, the warmth of the fire surrounding her, she knew, without a doubt, that she was finally home. The warmth of the cottage wrapped around Gerda like a soft embrace, and as she settled beside the hearth, the crackling fire seemed to carry away the last remnants of the cold she had carried within herself for so long. Outside, the stars sparkled like a quiet symphony in the sky, their distant light weaving through the darkened landscape. The village was peaceful, and for the first time in a long while, Gerda felt at peace with herself, as though a long and turbulent storm had finally passed. Her family sat around her, their voices soft and comforting, filling the room with laughter and conversation. The smell of the stew that simmered on the stove was rich and hearty, a reminder of home's simple pleasures. Gerda's younger sister leaned against her, asking her to tell stories of her adventures, of the journey that had brought her home. With a smile, Gerda began to recount the journey, speaking of the long, treacherous paths she had walked, of the challenges she had faced, and of the lessons she had learned from the elder tree mother. As Gerda spoke, her family listened intently, hanging on to every word. But it wasn't just the tale of magic and mystery that they were interested in. It was the transformation in Gerda herself. She had been the one to venture into the unknown, but it was clear now that she had come back not just physically whole, but spiritually renewed. Her eyes, once clouded with grief and confusion, now glimmered with a soft, quiet light. She had shed the weight of the past, embraced the cycle of life, and learned the deepest lesson of all, that love, both for others and for oneself, was the key to overcoming any darkness. The fire crackled in the background, casting soft shadows across the room, and the warmth from the hearth filled the space with a golden glow. Gerda's family, now gathered close, felt the change in her, a change that went beyond mere words. It was in the way she spoke, the way her heart seemed to resonate with a newfound peace. They had seen her struggle, seen the way her grief had weighed her down, but now they saw something different. A strength that came from within, from the love she had carried with her, and from the wisdom she had gained along the way. Gerda paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, and looked around at the faces of her family. She felt no rush, no urgency, as she had felt in the past. There was no need to hurry, no need to prove anything. The journey had been long and full of hardship, but it had led her back to where she belonged. She had returned not just as a survivor, but as someone who had embraced the fullness of life, its joys, its sorrows, its cycles, and had learned to live in harmony with them. As the evening wore on, Gerda's thoughts wandered to the elder tree mother, who had been the catalyst for her transformation. She would never forget the tree's gentle wisdom, its soft, soothing presence. The lessons she had learned from the tree had stayed with her. Lessons about life, love, and the importance of letting go. But the greatest lesson of all had been the realization that she was not alone. The love she had for her family, for Kay, for the world around her. This love was the thread that had woven the tapestry of her journey. It had been the light that guided her through the darkness, and it was the warmth that would continue to carry her forward. Gerda glanced out of the window, the soft glow of the moonlight illuminating the snow-covered landscape. It was a peaceful night, a stillness that felt both comforting and infinite. In the distance, the village stretched out, its rooftops dusted with snow, the lights in the windows glowing warmly against the cold. The world outside seemed so quiet, so still, but Gerda knew it was full of life, full of the quiet rhythms of the seasons, the pulse of nature's cycles. Her family, once again gathered together around the fire, laughed softly as the conversation drifted to lighter topics. Her younger brother poked fun at her, teasing her about how brave she had been, and for the first time in what seemed like ages, Gerda laughed, her laughter ringing clear and bright, full of the joy of the moment. Her heart felt light, unburdened by the past, as though she had finally let go of the weight that had clung to her for so long. In the quiet of the evening, with the fire crackling and the soft laughter of her family filling the room, Gerda realized that the greatest treasure of all was not the journey itself, nor the magical lessons she had learned. It was the people who stood beside her, the love that had carried her through the darkness, and the simple, beautiful truth that she was home. She would never forget the journey she had taken, the places she had seen, and the lessons she had learned. But now, as she sat surrounded by those who loved her, she understood that home was not just a place. It was a feeling, a sense of belonging, of peace, of connection, and she had found it again in the heart of her family, in the warmth of the hearth, and in the deep, abiding love that filled her heart. The days that followed Gerda's return to the village were filled with a quiet, peaceful rhythm. Each day she awoke to the soft light of morning breaking through the window, casting a golden glow over the cottage's worn wooden floors. The air was fresh and crisp, the scent of pine lingering from the nearby woods. Life felt grounded again, steady, slow, and serene. Gerda spent time with her family, sitting by the hearth in the evenings, her younger sister asking endless questions about her journey, eager to hear every detail. Her brother playfully teased her, making jokes about her bravery, but there was a warmth in his voice that made Gerda smile. She had missed these moments, these simple, beautiful exchanges that had once felt so ordinary. They were ordinary no longer. They were precious. She knew that the road ahead would not always be as peaceful as it felt now, but there was an understanding deep in her heart that whatever came their way, she could face it. The wisdom of the elder tree mother had changed her, had given her a new way of looking at the world. She no longer saw grief as something to be feared or avoided. Instead, she'd learned that grief was a part of life's cycle, just as spring follows winter, just as the flowers bloom after the coldest night. One evening, as the sun began to set, Gerda took a walk through the village. She passed by familiar homes, now softened by the evening light, their windows glowing with the warmth of the fires within. The smell of dinner wafted through the air, and the sound of children laughing and playing filled the streets. It was a peaceful evening, but Gerda felt something stirring in her heart, an awareness that life, in all its complexity, was moving around her. The village was small, but its charm was in its simplicity. People knew each other by name, and there was a sense of belonging here. But beyond the village's edges, the world stretched out into the unknown, with mysteries and challenges that Gerda now felt prepared to face. She had learned that home was not just a place, it was a state of being, a connection to the earth, to the people she loved, and to the life force that flowed through everything. As Gerda walked along the familiar path, her thoughts wandered back to the elder tree mother. The lessons she had learned, the quiet wisdom the tree had imparted, were not just lessons for the journey ahead, but for every moment of life. The cycles of nature, the ebb and flow of life, were all part of a greater tapestry. Gerda had felt the magic of the tree, the deep connection to the earth, and she understood now that this connection would always remain with her. It was not something that could be forgotten or taken away. It was part of her. Her path led her to the edge of the village, where the trees began to grow thicker, the shadows of dusk settling over the forest. The forest had once seemed dark and mysterious, full of secrets that frightened her. But now, with the wisdom she had gained, the forest felt different. It felt alive, vibrant, and full of stories waiting to be heard. The birds in the trees seemed to sing in harmony with the wind, and the rustling of the leaves felt like the earth itself was breathing with her. Gerda stood for a moment at the edge of the forest, taking in the sights and sounds of the evening. She could feel the presence of the forest around her, like a quiet conversation, as if the trees themselves were speaking to her. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the cool evening air fill her lungs. The weight of the world seemed to fall away, and in that moment she realized just how far she had come. She had traveled through grief and doubt, through the coldest of winters, and had found herself standing here, in the warmth of home, with a heart full of understanding and peace. A gentle breeze brushed against her face, and she smiled softly. She wasn't the same girl who had left the village months ago. She had changed, not just in her heart, but in the way she saw the world. The love she had for her family, for the world around her, had deepened. She had learned to trust in the flow of life, to accept the cycles of loss and renewal. She had learned that love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force of all. With one last glance at the village, Gerda turned toward the path leading into the forest. She wasn't leaving the village, not really. The village was where she had always belonged. But now, as she walked back into the embrace of the woods, she understood that the world beyond her home held mysteries waiting to be explored, lessons still to be learned. As the days turned into weeks, Gerda found herself walking a new path. Not one defined by the shadows of grief, but by the quiet, steady rhythm of life. The village, once a place where she felt the sting of loss, had transformed into a sanctuary, a place where healing seemed to live in every corner. The seasons shifted as if in harmony with her inner journey. Spring blossomed around her, softening the earth and giving rise to the vibrant greens of new life. She spent her days in the garden, her hands buried in the rich, warm soil. Each flower she planted seemed to bloom not just from the earth, but from the space within her heart that had once been closed off by sorrow. The vibrant colors of tulips and lilies filled the garden, reminding Gerda of the beauty that could come from even the most difficult of seasons. The garden was her sanctuary now, a place where the stillness of nature spoke to her, where she could breathe deeply and feel the warmth of the sun on her skin. Kay too had found his way back to himself. Slowly, the boy who had been lost to the Queen's cold grasp was becoming the boy she had once known. His laughter, once stilled by the icy spell, now echoed through the garden as they worked side by side, planting new life together. The joy that Gerda had longed to hear in his voice was now a constant companion in their daily work. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting a soft golden light across the village, Gerda and Kay sat side by side on a wooden bench in the garden. Their hands were still stained with the earth from their work, but there was a quiet contentment in the air, an unspoken understanding between them. Kay turned to Gerda, his expression thoughtful, his eyes filled with warmth. "Gerda, I feel like I'm seeing the world through new eyes. I never realized how much I had forgotten. The simple things, the sound of the wind in the trees, the scent of flowers blooming, the warmth of the sun on my face. Everything feels so different now." Gerda smiled gently, her heart swelling with affection for him. "That's the beauty of it, Kay," she replied softly. "We often forget how much we are given, how much is around us in the small moments. We take them for granted, thinking they're insignificant. But it's the small things, the quiet moments, that carry the most meaning." Kay nodded, his gaze shifting to the horizon, where the last of the sun's light was slipping behind the distant hills. "I used to believe that life was all about the big moments, the grand adventures, the things that happened in an instant. But now I realize it's the quiet, everyday things that shape us, like the way the morning light falls through the trees, or the way the earth smells after the rain. These moments, these are the ones that matter." Gerda reached out and gently took Kay's hand, her fingers lightly brushing against his. "It's the same for love," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "Love isn't just the grand gestures, the epic moments. It's in the quiet understanding, the shared smiles, the small acts of kindness that we give and receive every day. That's where the real magic is." The two of them sat in comfortable silence, the evening air growing cooler as the night approached. The garden around them was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, and the world felt peaceful, calm, alive. Gerda felt the steady beat of her heart, the warmth of Kay's hand in hers, and for the first time in a long while, she felt complete. As the days turned into weeks, Gerda found herself opening her heart even more to the world around her. She no longer felt the heaviness that had once weighed her down. The village, the garden, and her connection with Kay had healed her in ways she could not have anticipated. Her grief had not disappeared, but it had softened, transformed into something she could live with, something she could embrace. It was a part of her, yes, but it no longer defined her. One evening, as the stars began to appear in the sky, Gerda stood at the edge of the garden, looking up at the vast expanse above her. The night was clear, and the stars seemed to shimmer with a quiet intensity. She could feel the pull of something greater than herself, something that connected her to the world, to nature, to the people she loved. Kay stood beside her, his eyes following her gaze. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, his voice soft. "The way everything feels so connected, like we're all part of something bigger." Gerda nodded, her heart filled with a sense of peace. "Yes, it is, and we are. We always have been. We're part of the earth, part of the stars, part of the seasons that come and go. We're not alone. We never have been." They stood together in silence, the only sound the soft rustle of the trees in the breeze, the distant call of night birds, and the quiet murmur of the earth beneath their feet. The world felt infinite, filled with possibilities, yet it also felt incredibly intimate, as if everything they had experienced, everything they had overcome, had led them to this moment, to this quiet peace. Kay turned to Gerda, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Gerda, for everything. You brought me back to life. I can't imagine where I'd be without you." Gerda smiled gently, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. You never left, Kay. You were always with me. And now we're here, together, with the world stretching out before us. We have all the time we need. The night stretched on, peaceful and still, as the stars continued to shine above them, a reminder of the endless cycles of life, of the constant flow of time and change. Gerda and Kay stood together in the quiet of the night, hand in hand, knowing that their journey was far from over. But for now, in this moment, there was nothing else they needed but each other, and the love they had found in the quietest of moments. As the days turned into months, Gerda and Kay grew deeper into the rhythm of their life together. The seasons continued to change around them. Winter had faded, spring had flourished, and now the warmth of summer gently unfolded across the village. The village, once so quiet and distant, now seemed to echo with life at every corner, its streets bustling with the sounds of children, laughter, and familiar greetings. Gerda could feel the transformation within herself, a quiet understanding that had settled deep within her heart. Her connection with the world around her, with the land and the people she loved, had become unshakable. She saw the beauty in the simplest of things now, the gentle caress of the wind, the scent of fresh soil in the garden, the soft glow of the sun as it dipped below the horizon. Her eyes had been opened to the delicate balance of life, to the interconnectedness of all things, and she moved through each day with a sense of peace and fulfillment. Kay too had found his place. Once a young man lost in the cold grip of the Snow Queen's curse, he had blossomed into someone entirely new. No longer weighed down by the frost that had held him captive for so long, he had learned to appreciate the beauty in everything, the changing seasons, the people around him, and most importantly, his relationship with Gerda. The two of them had grown together, not just in love, but in wisdom. Kay no longer saw life as a series of challenges to endure, but as a collection of moments to be embraced and cherished. One evening, as they sat in the garden, the golden hues of sunset washing over them, Gerda turned to Kay with a quiet smile. They had been spending more and more time in the garden, tending to the flowers that now flourished around them. The plants, once mere buds, were now in full bloom, their colours vibrant and full of life. It was as though the entire garden was a reflection of their own journey, growing, blossoming, and becoming something beautiful. Kay looked at her, his gaze steady, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The air was filled with the sound of birds chirping in the distance, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the soft hum of the earth beneath their feet. There was something profoundly peaceful in the quiet, something that felt like home in its truest sense. "I've been thinking," Kay said softly, breaking the silence, "about everything we've been through, how we've changed, how everything has changed." He paused, his voice full of wonder. "It feels like a dream sometimes, like I've woken up from something I didn't fully understand. But now, I see it. I see everything clearly." Gerda turned her head slightly, her heart swelling at his words. "What do you see, Kay?" she asked, her voice gentle, full of curiosity. Kay smiled, a peaceful look in his eyes. "I see that life is a series of seasons, just like the world around us. There are times of cold, of darkness, but they always give way to the warmth of spring, to new beginnings, to growth. And with every season we learn more about who we are, about what we can handle, and about the beauty of change." Gerda nodded, her own thoughts mirroring his. "Yes," she agreed softly. "It's not just the world outside that changes. It's us too. We grow, we heal, and we learn to appreciate the moments we have, however fleeting they may be." The sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over their faces, and for a moment they sat in silence, simply enjoying the peace that surrounded them. It was as if time itself had slowed down, allowing them to savor the moment, to absorb the stillness that now filled their hearts. As the night began to fall, the first stars of the evening appeared, twinkling faintly in the clear sky above. Gerda and Kay stood up from the garden bench, their hands finding each other naturally, as if they had always belonged this way. Together they walked to the edge of the garden, where the soft light of the moon illuminated the path before them. Gerda paused for a moment, looking back at the garden, now bathed in moonlight. The flowers were still blooming, the leaves rustling gently in the night air, and she realized that this moment, this peaceful moment, surrounded by the beauty of life, was everything she had ever needed. Everything we've been through, she said softly, her voice full of gratitude, has brought us here, together, and I wouldn't change a thing. Kay squeezed her hand, a soft smile tugging at his lips. I wouldn't change it either, he replied, because now we're exactly where we're meant to be. They stood together, hand in hand, watching as the world around them gently settled into the quiet of the night. The stars above, the soft rustle of the trees, and the warmth of their love filled the air with a sense of peace that Gerda had never known before. They were home, not just in the village, but within themselves and each other, and they knew, deep in their hearts, that whatever the future held, they would face it together, with the wisdom of the seasons and the strength of their love. The days turned to weeks, and the village, once still and silent, seemed to hum with the quiet energy of life. Gerda and Kay continued to find their place in this renewed world, their connection deepening with each passing day. The seasons, like clockwork, continued their cycle, spring yielding to summer, and summer gradually giving way to the soft golden hues of autumn. With each change in the air, each shift in the landscape, Gerda felt a deeper sense of belonging. It was as if every moment was part of the larger pattern of life, a pattern that continued to unfold before her. There were still moments when the weight of the past would return, a fleeting thought, a soft reminder of the long journey they had endured, but those moments no longer held the same power over her. They had softened, become more like whispers, fading in the presence of the warmth that now filled her life. The love she had for Kay, for her family, and for the world around her had grown into something deeper than she had ever imagined. It was a love that could withstand the trials of time and space, a love that had been tested by the coldest winter and had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. One evening, as the sun sank low, casting long shadows over the village, Gerda and Kay found themselves once again sitting in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of twilight. The stars were just beginning to twinkle in the sky, their faint light matching the quiet sparkles in Gerda's eyes. She looked at Kay, the man who had once been lost to the cold magic of the Snow Queen, and saw not just the man she loved, but the person who had fought beside her, who had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. Do you ever wonder, Gerda asked softly, her voice like the gentle rustle of the leaves around them, how life keeps moving, how no matter how hard things get, there's always a way forward? Even when we think we can't go any further, we do. We find our way. Kay turned to her, his face thoughtful as he gazed at the sky, the deepening colours of the evening reflecting in his eyes. I do wonder, he said slowly. Sometimes it feels like we're just floating along, like leaves on the wind, carried by something bigger than ourselves. But maybe that's how it's meant to be. Maybe it's not about controlling everything or understanding everything. Maybe it's just about trusting the journey, even when we can't see where it's taking us. Gerda nodded, the weight of his words settling in her heart. She had always felt a certain pull within herself, a longing to control her destiny, to know exactly where the path would lead. But in the time she had spent with Kay, in the time they had both spent healing, she realized that there was beauty in the uncertainty. There was power in simply allowing life to unfold, in trusting that even when they didn't have all the answers, they were moving in the right direction, together. Kay squeezed her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. We've come so far, haven't we? He asked quietly. I think sometimes I forget just how much we've been through. But when I look at you, when I think about how we found our way back to each other, I know it was worth every step. Gerda smiled softly, the connection between them growing deeper with every passing moment. It was worth it all, she said, every trial, every challenge, because now we're here, together, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. They sat in silence for a while, simply enjoying each other's presence as the evening deepened around them. The air was cooler now, but the warmth of their hands intertwined, the quiet glow of the village surrounding them, and the stars above provided a sense of peace that Gerda hadn't known she could feel. It was as if everything in the world had come into balance, the love they shared being the center that held everything together. "I've been thinking," Kay said after a moment, his voice carrying a sense of finality, "about what comes next. We've both been through so much, but I think the real challenge, the real beauty, is finding the strength to move forward, to live the life we have now without looking back too much." Gerda met his gaze, her heart full of understanding. "We've learned so much, Kay," she said. "We've learned that love isn't just something that happens. It's something we choose, something we nurture. And as long as we keep choosing each other, keep moving forward together, I believe everything will fall into place." They rose from the bench, their hands still clasped, and began to walk back toward the house. The night had fully settled in now, the stars shining brightly above them. The path was lit by the soft glow of lanterns lining the way, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with the breeze. With each step, Gerda and Kay moved closer to the life they would build together. A life filled with love, warmth, and the quiet certainty that the journey ahead, however unknown, would be worth every step. As the days passed, Gerda and Kay continued to settle into their newfound peace. The garden, once just a simple patch of earth, now felt like a symbol of their growth, full of color and life that bloomed with every passing day. The flowers they planted together flourished, and the vibrant greens of the plants that surrounded them felt like a reflection of the vibrant love that had returned to their lives. The simple act of tending to the garden became a ritual for them, a way to nurture not only the earth but each other. One morning, Gerda stood in the garden, her hands gently pulling weeds from between the new shoots, when Kay came up behind her, his footsteps light on the soft earth. He wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her shoulder, and together they gazed at the plants, now thriving under their care. "You know," he said softly, "when we first came here, everything felt different. It felt like we were walking through life, just going through the motions, trying to survive. But now, it feels like we're truly living, doesn't it?" Gerda smiled, her hands still busy in the soil, her heart swelling with emotion. "It does," she agreed, her voice gentle. "We've come full circle, haven't we? We were lost, but now we've found our way back. And not just back to the village, but to each other, to ourselves." Kay's arms tightened around her, pulling her closer. "I think we've learned that love, real love, is more than just the moments of joy or happiness," he said. "It's about being there for each other, through everything, the darkness, the light, the hard times and the good. It's about knowing we'll always have each other, no matter what comes next." Gerda turned in his arms to face him, her eyes soft and full of love. "And I think we've learned that life isn't just something that happens to us," she added, her voice filled with understanding. "It's something we create together, with every choice, every step, every day." The two of them stood there for a while, simply holding each other in the quiet of the morning. The air around them was warm, filled with the scent of fresh flowers and earth, the sound of birdsong in the distance. It felt like time had slowed down, allowing them to bask in the simplicity of the moment, the peace of being together, grounded in the present. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its golden light over the garden, Gerda and Kay began to talk about the future, not with fear or uncertainty, but with hope and excitement. They discussed the life they would build, the children they might someday have, the adventures they would take, and the quiet, everyday moments that would become the foundation of their love. "We've been given this second chance," Kay said, his voice full of resolve. "And I don't want to waste it. I want to live a life that matters, a life we can look back on and say, 'We did it together.'" Gerda nodded, her heart in her throat. "We will," she whispered. "We'll build something beautiful, together." And so, as the days passed and the seasons continued their eternal cycle, Gerda and Kay moved forward, their hearts intertwined with the rhythm of the earth, with the pulse of life itself. They understood now that love wasn't just about the grand moments or the grand gestures. It was in the small, quiet things. It was in the way they cared for each other, in the way they worked side by side, in the way they chose to live, not just for themselves, but for each other. They had faced the darkest of times and had come through, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more in love than they had ever been. And as they walked hand in hand through the garden, the flowers blooming around them, they knew that this love would carry them through whatever came next. The future was uncertain, as it always would be, but they had each other, and together there was nothing they could not face. As the days continued to unfold, Gerda and Kay settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and new. The village, once a place of pain and loss, had transformed in their eyes. It was no longer just a place they had returned to. It had become their home once again, filled with the warmth of their love, their memories, and their growing sense of belonging. They had found peace not just in the world around them, but in each other. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the fields, Gerda stood by the window, watching the world wake up. The quiet stillness of the morning filled her with a sense of calm, and as she breathed in the fresh, crisp air, she felt a deep connection to everything around her. The world was full of possibilities, and she could feel them, waiting for her to step forward. Kay joined her at the window, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "It's a beautiful day," he said, his voice soft and content. He had always been the more quiet one, but now his words seemed to carry a deeper meaning, a sense of peace that Gerda had not known in their earlier days together. "Yes," Gerda replied, her voice full of gratitude. "Every day feels like a new beginning now. Every morning I wake up and feel like I'm seeing the world for the first time." Kay smiled, the warmth of his gaze matching the sunlight that streamed through the window. "I know what you mean. It's like we've both been given a second chance, a chance to really live." Gerda nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "I used to think that healing meant forgetting," she said softly. "But now I realize that healing is not about forgetting. It's about embracing everything, every memory, every feeling. It's about moving forward without leaving anything behind. And we've done that, Kay. We've found our way." The two of them stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the world outside continued its slow, steady awakening. The birds began to sing, the wind whispered through the trees, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. It was as if the world was celebrating with them, marking this new chapter in their lives, a chapter that was filled with hope, with love, and with a quiet sense of contentment. "We've come a long way," Kay said after a while, his voice thoughtful, "and I think we've learned something important along the way. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. The little moments, the ones that seem small at the time, are the ones that matter the most." Gerda smiled, her heart full. "Yes," she agreed, "the little moments are everything. They add up and they create something beautiful. And we've built something beautiful, Kay. We've built a life filled with love, with hope, and with peace." As the morning wore on, Gerda and Kay walked hand in hand through the village, the sunlight casting long shadows on the path before them. The world around them was alive, vibrant, and full of promise. The village, the forest, the fields, they all seemed to hum with energy, as though everything had come to life in response to the love and warmth they had shared. They passed by familiar homes, each one holding its own story, its own piece of the past. But now, as they walked together, Gerda realized that their own story was just beginning. The journey they had been on, the journey of healing, of rediscovering love, had brought them here to this moment, where the future seemed endless and full of possibility. Kay squeezed her hand, and Gerda looked up at him, her eyes full of love and understanding. "We have so much ahead of us, don't we?" she asked, her voice soft. Kay nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yes, we do. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The village, once quiet and still, was now full of life, and Gerda felt the pulse of that life in her own heart. The future was uncertain, but there was a deep sense of peace in knowing that they would face it hand in hand. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they had each other, and that was enough. As the days grew longer and the seasons continued to shift, Gerda and Kay's bond only deepened. The rhythms of their daily life in the village became a source of quiet joy. They would rise early, their mornings filled with the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven and the soft sounds of the village coming to life. They worked side by side in the garden, their hands covered in earth, planting new flowers and watching the seasons unfold, one petal at a time. The garden had become not just a place of beauty, but a symbol of their journey, of the healing they had both experienced. With every bloom, with every new leaf that appeared, Gerda saw the growth in herself and in Kay. The love they had cultivated together was not just a fleeting emotion. It had become a part of them, like the roots of the plants they nurtured. It was steady, grounded, and one evening, as the sun set behind the hills, casting the sky in hues of pink and lavender, Gerda sat on the porch, watching the village settle into its quiet evening rhythm. Kay joined her, sitting beside her in the soft, golden light of dusk. The air was cool, but there was warmth in their closeness, in the way they shared these peaceful moments together. Kay rested his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. "We've come so far, haven't we?" he said, his voice low and reflective. Gerda nodded, her heart full. "Yes, we have, and we're here now, in this moment, together, and that's all that matters." The world around them seemed to breathe with contentment. The soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, the distant chirping of crickets, the faint hum of life continuing on its endless journey. Everything felt in balance, as if the universe itself was pausing to acknowledge the peace they'd found. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the evening air cooling around them, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. Gerda felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude fill her chest. Gratitude for the love she had found, for the journey she had taken, and for the future that lay before them. The past was no longer a source of pain. It was a part of the fabric that had woven them together, each moment, each challenge, leading them to this place of peace and love. "Kay," Gerda said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper, "do you ever wonder what the future holds?" Kay looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "I don't know what the future holds, Gerda," he said, his voice calm. "But I do know that whatever it is, I want to face it with you, together." Gerda smiled, her heart swelling with love. "Together," she echoed, the word holding more meaning now than it ever had before. The night deepened around them, the stars shining brightly in the sky above. Gerda leaned her head on Kay's shoulder, her eyes closed, feeling the steady beat of his heart next to hers. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet peace of the world, she knew that everything would be okay. She had walked through the darkest of times, and now she was standing in the light. They had healed together. They had found love together. And now, no matter what the future held, they would face it hand in hand, knowing that the love they shared was stronger than any challenge, more enduring than any storm. As the night stretched on, Gerda and Kay sat there, wrapped in the peace of the moment, knowing that their love would continue to grow, to bloom, like the garden that surrounded them. It was a love that had weathered storms, that had transformed them both, and that would always be there, steady and strong as the seasons continued their eternal dance.